This RealAg Radio podcast is brought to you by Intruvix 2 herbicide from FMC. With its fast-burning activity and long-lasting systemic action, Intruvix 2 herbicide delivers consistent pre-seed broadleaf control in cereals. It's fast and it lasts. See your local retailer today.
It's time for RealAg Radio on Rural Radio Channel 147 on Sirius XM. RealAg Radio and RealAgriculture.com is your home for insight and analysis of the issues that are impacting your farm business. Let's get real and get connected with RealAg Radio. Welcome to RealAg Radio here on Rural Radio 147, Sirius XM. Shaun Haney, your host here on this Tuesday edition of the show. Hey, thanks so much, everybody, for making RealAg Radio and Rural Radio 147 a big part of your workday. Also, of course, hello to everybody out there listening on the RealAg Radio podcast as well. We continue to serve you extended content on the RealAg Radio podcast from this show, whether it's extended interviews like today or sometimes we do bonus segments as well, so really appreciate you tuning in. Now, today on the program, I'm broadcasting today from Halifax, Nova Scotia. Had a great time yesterday in Greenwich and drove the hour from Halifax over to Greenwich and really enjoyed that meeting. It was the Scotia Horticultural Congress. Big thanks to everybody that was in attendance yesterday. Tomorrow, I'll be in, and I'm going to fly there this afternoon, St. John's, Newfoundland. Yes, headed to the Rock, home of Bern Tobin of Real Agriculture. Bern is very jealous that Pete and I are both going to be on the stage together in St. John's, Newfoundland. Looking really forward to that, and you're going to hear that panel on nitrogen management tomorrow here on the program. Today on the show, though, what do we have today? Well, we've got some new research out from Stratus Ag Research and Fertilizer Canada looking at the implementation of 4R in a canola rotation. Mike Weddel of Stratus and Cassandra Cotton of Fertilizer Canada will join us. We've got a product spotlight with Farming Smarter. Jill Harvie of Harvie Ranching. Big winners. Big winners in the Carload at the Denver Stock Show. So Jill's going to be with us to talk about those 8 bulls and what brought home the gold for Harvie Ranching out of Olds, making Canada very proud. And then we have a Farm Safety Roundup with Kristin Hoffman. We're going to be talking about, and I entitled this one, moving stuff. I actually used a different word, but we'll use stuff, moving stuff. Not with and sometimes we should be using the forklift, we should be using the loader, but sometimes we're trying to move stuff with our back. And that can create some havoc, some problems, some long-term damage. My grandfather went through this with his back. Man, he had some back issues. It just punished him the rest of his life. I got a bad shoulder, yeah, right? And some of that is self-inflicted by just doing dumb stuff, really dumb stuff. But some of this can be prevented. And so as you get a little bit closer to spring, hey, for a lot of you that are calving, you're moving stuff all the time. So this is very applicable to you as well. Now, if you have any feedback on today's program, we'd love to hear from you. Send me an email, shaney@realagriculture.com. Or, of course, you can find Real Agriculture across all different social media platforms or call that RealAg feedback line, 855-776-6147. You know, on my flight from Arizona on Sunday to Halifax, which is, you're reminded how big the continent is when you got to travel diagonally across it. A full day of travel, let me tell you. Anyway, 3 flights on Sunday. I watched the Netflix series American Primeville, which is a Western, which is a very raw, gritty, real depiction of, I think it was the year 1857, I believe. It was the Utah War in the Utah Territory, a battle between the Native tribes, the Mormon Church, and the settlers. Fantastic 6-part series. Encourage you to watch it. It is legit. I'm a fan of like Tombstone the Western, all the John Wayne movies, Sons of Katie Elder being the best. It's a masterpiece. When they're shooting the arrows, it's like the arrows, like I'm ducking. I was ducking on the plane because it's so realistic, and I highly encourage you to check it out. Let's take a break. When we come back, we're talking 4R and canola right after this.
I'm the kind of guy who enjoys his freedom. Sure, I have a wife, kids, and a mortgage. But now I have new on-deck herbicide for wheat and barley. Thanks to a unique combination of actives, it delivers both superior control of tough weeds like kochia and proactive resistance management with, listen to this, complete rotational freedom. You can't tie this wild stallion down. Spray for today, plan for tomorrow with new on-deck herbicide. Visit your retailer or Corteva.ca to learn more.
The Canola School on RealAgriculture.com is your one-stop shop for everything a canola grower needs. Check out our free video series on YouTube for all the latest in canola agronomy, research, marketing, and more. Don't have time to watch? Download the podcast version of the Canola School on RealAgriculture.com or anywhere you download your podcasts. Stay on top of all things canola with the Canola School on RealAgriculture.com, brought to you by BASF and Invigor Hybrid Canola.
If you're serious about agriculture, RealAg's got you covered.
For over 10 years, we've listened to and shared what producers have to say about everything from policy to agronomy from coast to coast.
Keep up with the latest in Canadian agriculture at RealAgriculture.com through daily newsletters and check out our YouTube channel.
Thanks for joining us in the RealAg community as we continue to cover and serve North American agriculture.
Maximize productivity and profitability with an innovative all-in-one approach to farming, combining accounting, business planning, agronomic field planning, and advanced technology. MNP Ag Intellect delivers personalized solutions that empower you to make confident, data-driven decisions. You can visit mnp.ca to learn more. We're going to talk right now about some new research relative to 4R and canola production. Joining us here to discuss some of the results of what farmers had to say is up first, it's Mike Weddel. He is with Stratus Ag Research. Hey, Mike, great to chat with you.
Yeah, nice to be here, Shaun.
Yeah, absolutely. Also joining us is Cassandra Cotton with Fertilizer Canada. Cassandra, it's great to chat with you as well.
Nice to see you again.
Okay, so let's dig in here. So, Mike, what percentage of canola farmers, based on your research, have adopted 4R nutrient stewardship practices, and what are some of the things that are driving that adoption?
Yeah, so Shaun, what we see in the most recent work we did, which was in 2023, the 2024 study is still in the hopper, still in the works, so we don't know yet for 24. But in 23, about 60% of the canola acres met the requirements of a basic level of 4R compliance. And that was up from about 43% in 2020. So we're seeing a progression of sort of adoption of the 4R practices over time.
And Cassandra, where does that fit relative to some of the objectives and KPIs that an organization like Fertilizer Canada would have?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really positive to see such an uptake of acres over those years. I guess one of the things that we're still looking at, though, is these are self-reported acres. So, high awareness, increase in uptake, but in order to really count what's happening on the ground, we have other programming where we actually, count the acres that are signed off with a certified crop advisor on the ground, and those numbers are much lower. So certainly there's high uptake, but the actual accounting of those acres in a more formalized way is something that we're looking to in the future.
Well, and I'm assuming here like 100% adoption, although that sounds great.
Yeah,
it's not really. That's not a possibility. I don't know. You tell me, but.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we expect to see 100% adoption, but that's the thing about the 4Rs too, is it's very incremental, right? So you could be at any point of implementation of the 4Rs, you might be, doing nothing. And so then, you get on the rung doing some of those basic levels, but, there's also more advanced practices. So there's always that room for, even if we did have 60% of farmers in Western Canada operating with canola at a basic level, there's still room for, incremental improvement from a basic level to more advanced practices too.
So, Mike, how many farmers surveyed, and over what time period?
Yeah, so each year, John, we interview somewhere around 500 to 600 canola growers. And we started doing this back in 2015 was the first year. So I think we're into about our 10th year in 2024. So we've got a nice, robust sample of farmers who are telling us about, what are their practices when it comes to fertilizer applications, and what are some of their attitudes about how they view their fertility program.
And why canola?
Well, one of the reasons for canola is it's a huge crop. It's one of arguably the most important crop that we have in Canada. It's also a heavy consumer of fertilizer. So it needs a lot of fertilizer in order to survive. The industry has got some huge growth objectives in terms of increasing the average yields of canola. So that's one of the crops that I think the industry felt was really important for us to have a clear handle on.
Cassandra, is there regional differences? As we look at the canola growing region, do we see regionality variance when it comes to how people are adopting and approaching 4R?
Yeah, I think within the survey, we did find that there's different compliance levels kind of differ depending on the region. So, for example, I think we saw some significantly higher rates in Alberta and among those like larger farms. So we're talking about, 4,000 plus acres. And so, there's different reasons for that, like environmental stewardship motivations and economic incentives like, improving yields will contribute to these regional differences. But I think, depending again on where you're at in adoption of the 4Rs, maybe some of those smaller mid-sized farms might lag a little bit more in adoption because of resources constraints or limited access to, professional advice, or some of those more advanced practices, do require more capital investment, perhaps, than some of those more basic practices do.
But Mike, how well is, people, it's like one of those phrases, like people throw around 4R, like, 4R. How well is 4R understood by growers in generality? And is there a certain component of that 4R that is maybe lacking in, like it's understood differently than some of the others? Like, talk about some of that.
Yeah, you bet. So when we started this project in 2015, at that time, we saw about 47% of farmers indicated that they were familiar with the concept of 4R. And that's increased now to 73%. So from 47 to 73%. It's been a slow progression over that 8 or 9 or 10 year period in terms of increasing familiarity. As Cassandra said, farmers who are larger farms are much more familiar. Younger farmers are more familiar with 4R practices as well.
So if we look at source, rate, time, and place, are one of those less adopted than the other, or not as understood as well?
Yeah, I think the most difficult area for farmers to comply with is on the application rate. So we seldom see, much less frequently do we see that they're out of sync in terms of timing or placement or source, but it's the application rate. And what I found interesting when I started learning about 4R is that nobody is saying, what the rate should be. What the 4R principles call for is an agronomically sound, scientifically sound approach to determining what the rate should be. And that's, I think, where some farmers are running into some difficulty. And we see some of the reasons for that, right, Cassandra?
Yeah, I think I would just add, Shaun, like what I found interesting in the survey on, you're almost talking about like, what is a 4R acre? Like, what is the definition of a 4R? And I always say, like, I wish I worked in beef, it's just so much cleaner and like simple. But crops is tough. There's just so many variables to that. So I do think what was interesting in the survey, and I think we're seeing this over and over again, is there's an awareness level of, the 4R framework. But then whenever you actually dig into the data on, okay, the farmer has like maybe a lower awareness of the 4Rs. But then when you look at how they answered the questions on, are you soil sampling? Are you, variable rate? Are you split applying? Are you banding? Like all those practices, they actually are practicing the 4Rs, but they just don't call it that, or they don't, participate in the program, or they don't know about it. So I do think that there is still, I think it's getting smaller, but I still think that gap sort of exists. And I think that's why at this point, we're really pushing for growers to, work with a certified crop advisor to develop a plan, because really that's the only way that you are able to say and know for sure that you're operating under that framework.
Yeah, that makes sense. And it's, even if the grower doesn't identify it as 4R, if they're doing it, then we're, thumbs up.
Yeah.
4R to me is like the process for the grower to engage in when it relates to fertilizer and the strategy. Is there numbers or math been put to how that process leads to the outcome? And the outcome being, growers that engage in 4R, whether they know it or not, there's this much yield bump, or there's this much change in soil health, or this much change in, one of the key KPIs, profitability. Do we have anything around that?
We certainly do. Like, we have a lot of research on that. Again, it's so difficult to, say, you do this practice, it's going to get you, $37 an acre or more. It's going to reduce your emissions by 35%, because it depends on where you're starting from. So, if we basically do some case studies. So like, let's say you're moving from straight urea and you're utilizing an EF. EFs have been shown in the prairies with canola to reduce emissions by, up to 35%. Where I think it gets tricky, and I'm sure we'll chat about as well, is the economic benefit is there. Intrinsically, you're getting, by using some of these practices, you're getting more fertilizer to the plant. That's the whole point, right? So you're utilizing your fertilizer dollars better. Presumably, you're getting an economic bump through yield or whatever other means. But the yield, the economic benefit, what we're seeing in a lot of these practices, particularly the more advanced practices, is much less greater than the environmental benefit. So in order for growers to adopt these practices and accelerate adoption, the discussion always comes around with incentives and how do we incentivize adoption to de-risk those practices to get growers, utilizing them long term.
Okay, and that's exactly where I was going next. So beautiful segue. Mike, what about the incentives? And I'm going to have a follow-up, which is the people that have already adopted, they're going to be like, excuse me, over here. Mm-hmm. But what do we find out about incentives relative to increasing that adoption rate for people that haven't done so yet?
Yeah, a couple of thoughts on that, Shaun. One is what we see in the research is that those farmers who have adopted 4R, in particular, who have a 4R plan in place, what they tell us that they see in terms of benefits is, one, they see an economic return. They see improved soil quality. They get then the sense, derived benefit, which is that they know that they're practicing the most environmentally sustainable practices that they can. So they tell us that they're seeing these benefits. What we also see is that farmers who tell us that they're not practicing 4R. A couple of the reasons that that they don't is one, they say a lack of incentive or lack of proven benefits to it are kind of in their head as to some of the reasons why they don't. And I think that reinforces what Cassandra has said, is that, in order to move things further along, and this may be particularly true with smaller farmers who don't have the same level of resources, is that the challenge will be how do we create an environment whereby they see the value.
Now, we've been focused on the people. We've talked a little bit here about the people that haven't adopted yet and how we get that number higher. But I also hear from parts of our audience that are, highly engaged in this and have been for a while, that say, like, what are we talking about? Like, this is like elementary. Like, this is just common sense. Everybody should be doing this. And I have for a long time. We need to up our game in terms of what 4R, 4R plus or 4R premium, however we want to put that, or maybe we want to have 6R. I don't know what we're doing, but they're saying, hey, we need to up our game here because this is like table stakes. Did you hear it all from people you surveyed in that regard? And how big is that group if you did?
Yeah, I think we hear that a lot, maybe not so much through this survey, but certainly in a lot of the other initiatives that we engage in, is that whole concept of you're almost incenting laggards, right? You're not actually incentivizing those that are leaders in this space, but those who are basically waiting to see what happens in the market to get, a benefit incentive-wise out of these practices. But I do think with the way that the market is moving, that even for those that are currently, very advanced in their practices, are already doing those, as you say, table stakes practices, that there is an opportunity to make things like formalizing a plan with a sign off from for a designated certified crop advisor additional. So, for those farmers that are doing this, but they don't actually have a formalized plan in place with a sign off, that there would be incentives for that verification piece. Certainly, I think something like an offset market, a carbon trading market for growers would help commoditize that data for them in some way, because right now there's no market really for them to be paid for that. And so I think certainly when we're talking about commoditizing their data, there's an opportunity for formality in what they're already doing to get that incentive back.
Mike, from your viewpoint, Stratus does a lot of research across a number of different topics. Is there a data point or some things you remember as you go through the results that stuck out to you as something kind of interesting, or maybe changed your opinion or your thought, or what you thought, sort of your perception was? I know you've been doing this for a number of years, but talk about something that stuck out to you.
Yeah, one of the things that really jumps out for me goes back to, I think, what Cassandra just was talking about a formalized 4R plan, but also in particular working with a designated agronomist who's been certified and knowledgeable about 4R. And what we see in the data is that we ask farmers who's making the fertilizer rate decision. And we ask them, is it your ag retailer that's deciding? Is it an independent agronomist? Or are you making the rate decision yourself on the farm? Somebody who works there or whatever. And then we looked at, well, what's the compliance with these basic levels of 4R based on who's making the rate recommendation? And what we found is that if the ag retailer or an independent crop advisor is making the rate recommendation, between 75% and 85% of the acres meet the requirements of 4R. But if the farmer is doing the rate recommendation themselves, it's only a little over 40% of those acres that are, and 60% of the time, the farmer's making their own rate decision. So the thing that struck me was the more we could somehow encourage farmers to get out there, rely on their fertilizer retailer or their independent agronomist to help them get the rate right, then that might be one of the easiest, least expensive ways of improving adoption.
So now the results are out. If somebody wants more information, they want to access some of this key information, how do they do so? Where do they go?
Yeah, so all the results and past results as well, looking at trend lines, are available on Fertilizer Canada's website. And we can grant access to anyone who would like to see the data.
Okay, awesome stuff. Important work. Oh, sorry, Mike, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say that in addition, we have Stratus has a short report on adoption of 4R practices in canola, and that can be downloaded at no charge from stratusresearch.com/4R-fertilizer. So if anybody is interested, they're welcome to download that report as well.
Great stuff. And Fertilizer Canada's website is fertilizercanada.ca. Cassandra, thanks a lot for joining us.
No problem. Thank you, Shaun.
Hey, Mike, all the best.
Thanks, Shaun. Same to you.
If you have any thoughts, comments, questions about what we just chatted about, important key information there, I really enjoyed that. You can send me an email, shaney@realagriculture.com, or of course you can call the RealAg feedback line, 855-776-6147. When we come back on RealAg Radio, we're going to hear from Jamie at Farming Smarter in a product spotlight. You're listening to RealAg Radio, Rural Radio 147, Sirius XM. Lima Grain Cereal Seed brings you best-in-class performance for winter and spring wheat, including 12 national wheat yield contest winners in 2024. With the most extensive coaxium portfolio and over 15 top-performing varieties, Lima Grain delivers superior genetics to control grassy weeds when you need it, fall or spring. Boost your yield potential today. Visit limagraincerealseeds.com or call your LCS Regional Commercial Manager for more info.
Before you get back in the field this year, spend some time with the Corn School on RealAgriculture.com. Get all the information you need on hybrid selection, planting depth, crop inputs, and more from a wide range of industry experts. A massive library of video content is available on demand when you need it most. Spend your time outside of the field, inside the classroom, with the Corn School on RealAgriculture.com.
Get all the information you need to keep your pulse crop healthy and profitable with the Pulse School on RealAgriculture.com. The Pulse School is a free YouTube video series covering agronomy, research, and more across a host of different pulse crops. It's also available as an audio podcast wherever you download or stream your favorite podcast. Check us out on YouTube or visit RealAgriculture.com. The Pulse School, brought to you by BSF Canada.
Welcome back to RealAg Radio here on Rural Radio, Channel 147, Sirius XM. I am Lindsay Smith, and it is time for today's Product Spotlight. Joining me now, I've got Jamie Puchinger. She's the Assistant Manager of Farming Smarter, based near Lethbridge. Welcome here, Jamie.
Hi, welcome. Thanks.
All right. So exciting times. I think we got to do this interview last year talking about a really fantastic event that Farming Smarter puts on. What is this event? When is it happening?
Yeah, the upcoming Farming Smarter Conference and Trade Show will be February 12th and 13th here in Lethbridge, Alberta. And this event has been taking place since the early 1990s, and it has its roots back to a reduced tillage event, and we've just maintained it and continue on with this event every year.
Okay, so we've got some history to this event. It's a big one. It's an important one. I know many people go back year after year. So tell me a bit more about it. What can people expect? Who should go to this conference?
Well, Farming Smarter, this conference isn't your typical agronomy conference. It is the perfect place to hear updates about cutting-edge research in agronomy, insight in the agriculture industry from leading experts across policy, academia, and then also to share wisdom with other innovative minds. So if you're at all looking to connect with some passionate innovators, this is absolutely the event to attend.
Mm-hmm. Now, of course, Farming Smarter does some really cool research, but part of this conference is bringing in some of those amazing keynote speakers, people that you may not get to hear anywhere else, or people that bring a perspective that people want to sit down and exactly that, share a coffee and maybe unpack some of that. So who are the keynote speakers? What are they covering at this year's conference?
The recent U.S. election and being at election year here at home, policy and its impact on innovation is sort of our big overarching theme for this event. Speakers will include Honorable Gary Marr, who will share his perspectives on Alberta's position in the greater agriculture industry and the impact that we can have. Dr. Stuart Smith will celebrate Canada's system of agriculture and sustainability as the best in the world. And Dr. Peter James Frackney, who will talk about how too much policy can stifle otherwise beneficial opportunities.
Ooh, that is a big one. That is always a sticking point is we need sound policy. We need good policy. But sometimes bad policy gets in the way. That sounds like a fascinating discussion. Absolutely. All right. So everybody make sure mark your calendars. What then, from sort of the history of this, from that lineup, which sounds really good, what does this conference, what is it known for? What do sort of people say when you say, oh, I'm going to Farming Smarter? What is it known for in that regard?
The comments that we get most frequently on our evaluations is they're amazed at our ability to put together such a good lineup of speakers and topics, that it's a super well-organized event, and we always have exceptional food. We create this community and an opportunity to network with those in the industry, and they're some of the best people in the industry. In addition, we support youth in agriculture, so we have the 4-H fundraising auction, and we bring in some of their best speakers to present and sort of bring our energy back after our lunch break.
Very important, actually, to get we're all digesting. We'd like to take a nap. No, keep the energy up, get the youth involved. And I'm so glad that you mentioned the food. That's really important. To break bread, share a meal, it should be delicious. But you're right. Incredibly important to have that networking opportunity, really share about what you hear and what you think about it, which is fantastic. So you did mention, and let's recap. So February 12th and 13th, Lethbridge, Alberta. It's those 2 days. Where then, for anyone who wants to register, take a look at the agenda, needs to get all those details, where can they go for all this information?
FarmingSmarter.com. You can find all the information on our conference page and register online as well.
Okay, and register online. So that is FarmingSmarter.com. Head on over there, take a look at all the information, get yourself registered, and make sure this is the must-do for your middle of February list. There you go. All right, Jamie, just quickly, I did mention sort of off the top, Farming Smarter, of course, known for doing some fabulous research. Will there be an update on all the wonderful things that Farming Smarter has planned for 2025?
Yeah, so we've got, in addition to the policy-based speakers, we have presentations that are focused on the practical, usable agronomy and knowledge. Some of those topics will include soil conservation, potato production, weed and insect management, PGRs, all kinds of different topics. We're super excited to hear Dr. Kristin Simons from North Dakota. She's going to share some results from a 40-year long-term study to determine the combined effects of crop rotations, tillage systems, fertilizer rates and sources, and how they have an impact on the soil and crop production. And we also have a master's student who's going to present his graduate research on remote sensed imagery that can be used to estimate wheat stem sawfly in wheat fields. And then, of course, kochia management is always a huge topic. So we have Dr. Bill Hammond and Steve Shurtleff. And then you definitely don't want to miss a presentation from legendary meteorologist David Spence.
Absolutely. The weather. We all, you know what? It's great. We all, there's all sorts of things we can't control, but we all want to hear about what we can't. So yeah, it's incredibly important. All right. Head on over. That's FarmingSmarter.com. Jamie, thank you so much for joining me on the show today.
Thanks so much.
All right. We'll be back with more RealAg Radio right after this.
Co-op knows your community because we live here too. Our teams are your trusted partners with a range of expertise to help support your entire farm operation. And we're giving back. In the past 5 years, Co-op has invested over $1.1 billion in the prairies through building, upgrading, and expanding local facilities. And we've returned over $1.17 billion to Co-op members in the prairies. Co-op, we're all building something for the future. Here for your farm, here for your family. Learn more at coop.crs/farm.
Infuse some energy into your next corporate event, customer meeting, or conference with RealAg Radio, Canada's national agriculture radio show. Create a unique experience at your next event with host Shaun Haney, broadcasting RealAg Radio live on SiriusXM, featuring exciting guests, captivating interviews, and the latest news from the agriculture community. Contact advertising at realagriculture.com or call 587-787-1795 to book your on location with RealAg Radio today.
For every acre, every row, every seed, precision wins every single time. Only Seedmaster delivers unmatched accuracy for better yields and bigger profits. Seedmaster, driven by precision, leading the way in seeding innovation. Find out more by going to seedmaster.ca. Joined right now by Jill Harvie of Harvie Ranching out of Olds, Alberta. Jill, how are we doing?
Very good.
Okay, well, it's great to chat with you. It's been a while. Now, Harvie Ranching is always very busy on the cattle scene. You just returned from the Denver Stock Show, and was there Queen playing in the background at the airport when you landed? Because you brought home a big trophy.
Yes, Shaun, it was pretty exciting. We won the national champion Carload in Denver this year. So that means 8 bulls went up against other competitors that have 8 bulls, and it's kind of the big mecca when it comes to the history of the Denver Stock Show. If you can win that, you've really made it. So it's pretty exciting.
Yeah, so when you had sent me the message this morning, right away, I was just like, wow. And I guess provide a little bit more context to the significance of this. You basically, what are they judging on?
Well, when you look at the history of the National Western Stock Show, many, many years ago, I think in the early 1900s, of course, the stock show started, and they used to bring in carloads of bulls through rail, and then they had the actual rail car in the background of our picture that we took this year. So they brought that in this year, which is kind of cool. And so there used to be a larger number of bulls, and over the years, it was 12 bulls down to 10, and now it's 8. But 8 is still a large amount of bulls to get together that are consistent in type and kind, in color, size, and effectively just everything about them represents your program. So your EPDs, having balanced EPDs and real world type cattle that are functional, get out and walk, get out and move, are good footed, have the hair, the look, pigment, all these things that Hereford breeders are looking for. So if you can put a carload together, it really means that your breeding program, it's not just a one-hit wonder. It's truly something to be really excited about, and has marketing, written all over it.
Yeah. Did you think you had a chance, or did this catch you off guard?
Well, so we have competed in the open show for many years, probably around 20 years, and took a little break, a few years ago. And then last year we brought our first carload. We were reserve champion carload last year. We learned a few things, and we knew we could come back and really have a good shot at it. There was some great competition, and the people who the Landgren Ranch that got around us last year, they were reserved to us this year. They've got a great cattle operation as well. So, but just to be able to put that group of bulls together and to see them in the background and just have the excitement and all of our friends and family rooting for us, here at home and in Denver was pretty exciting. And so it was a great moment.
Yeah. Were there other Canadians that were competing as well?
So in the Angus this year, 6 Mile, were there. They had a great show. I do believe that they won Champion Pen of Bulls and Champion Red Angus Bull. And they also Yorgas from Saskatchewan. They had some limo cattle there competing as well. And in the Charolais, the Blanchette family had some Charolais. So those were the Hereford, those were the Canadian operations that I know of.
Jill, what are some of the things that you have, like, this doesn't happen by accident. There is a serious commitment and process put into getting your genetics to be able to compete on this global scale. What are some of the things that you and your husband have done on the ranch to get you to this point?
Well, of course, both our families have been in the Hereford business for many years, all of our lives anyhow. And Cole and I are deeply passionate about raising high quality cattle. And we have an annual bull sale every March, second Tuesday in March. And, we want to listen to our customers and raise the kind of bulls that they need. And thankfully, those are the kind of bulls that we believe truly, are going to change and shape the Canadian beef industry and even the global industry. We buy source genetics from wherever. It doesn't matter who it's from. They just have to be the kind of cattle that really suit our marketplace. And of course, Cole and I judge quite a few cattle shows as well all over the globe. And, we have convictions about what we like, what works. Cole and I are hands-on our operation as well. We truly believe that if you're going to judge a cattle show, you better be able to calve out cows too, so that you can be always on top of what really matters. Functionality of cattle is so important. We do spend a lot of time and effort and finances in buying the right kind of cattle and genetics and embryos. We do a lot of embryo work extensively and AI, and we do believe that is what allows us to be leaders. And the other thing too is we're not afraid of doing things, doing things differently or being the leaders in forging forward. A few months back, when CFIA had put out their news release about, asking producers not to go to cattle shows south of the border, that was many months away. A lot of people kind of just right then and there said, "Oh, well, we won't do it." The thing is I just truly believe that everything needs to be done and take the steps needed to be able to go do the things that we need to do to promote our cattle and doing so in a safe and effective way. And we did just that, and it was not an issue at all. And so after all of that, yes, there was more paperwork, and yes, there's a few more hoops, but really totally worth it.
Great stuff. Well, I would imagine, too, a victory like this provides some pretty awesome marketing material for your next bull sale.
For sure. We will be selling the Carload in our bull sale, along with our the remainder of our Hereford bulls and then our Charolais bulls as well. And in Denver, we did sell the pick of the Carload, one bull, and that turned into two bulls. And that was pretty exciting. The top bull, he sold for $36,500. And then we said, well, if the runner-up wants a different bull, we'll sell him too. And he sold for $36,000. And so that was really, really exciting. We're so proud to have those two bulls. One's going to South Dakota and the other one will stay here in Canada. So a great opportunity for those who decided to step into our program.
That's amazing. That's awesome. What a great story. Well, hey, when is the Harvie Ranching Bull Sale?
March 11th, and it'll be at 1:30 at the ranch here at Olds.
Nice, great stuff. So if you're in the market, you know where to find some champion genetics. Everybody. Hey, Jill, congratulations to you and Cole and the entire family and everybody working in the operation there. Well done, making Canada very proud.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. And we'll be going back next year.
That was Jill Harvie of Harvie Ranching out of Olds, Alberta. When we come back on RealAg Radio, we're going to talk about farm safety in our latest episode of the Farm Safety Roundup. We're going to talk about moving stuff. Yeah, not like with a forklift or a loader. Moving stuff with your back. Some of the dangers right after this. RealAg Radio is Canada's only daily radio show focused on agriculture. Get expert advice on Agronomic Monday. Tuesdays and Wednesdays will cover a broad range of issues. Thursday we'll hear from farmers across the country on the Farmer Rapid Fire. And we'll wrap things up Fridays with the RealAg Issues panel with Kelvin Hepner and Lindsay Smith. Join us Monday through Friday at 4:30 Eastern. And don't forget about the replay at 7 in the morning on Rural Radio 147, Sirius XM.
I'm Lindsay Smith from RealAgriculture.com. Join me Monday nights for The Agronomist, a 1-hour live and interactive show broadcast across YouTube, Facebook, and X. Monday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern, I host expert agronomists from all over the country to give you answers to some of the toughest agronomic questions. Join us live or catch the replay Tuesday morning. That's The Agronomist with me, Lindsay Smith, Monday nights live at 8 p.m. Eastern.
Shaun Haney here with RealAgriculture.com. The Farm Safety Roundup is back with expertise to help you avoid harm on the farm. Material handling it is a term used to describe all the processes involved in the movement and storage of agricultural products. More commonly, like a lot of times we'd say, we're moving stuff. And as we get a little bit closer to spring, we are moving a lot of things around the farm. And, in the day-to-day of business, of farming, we move things a lot. And a lot of times we probably just do it intuitively, but don't necessarily do a lot of thinking in relation to that. Whether by hand or some of the machines, think about a skid steer, for example. Each scenario really does pose an opportunity for there to be safety risks that can be avoided or at least managed or mitigated. Kristin Hoffman supports farmers as a health and safety consultant with workplace safety and prevention services. Kristin, it's great to have you back on the program.
Thanks so much, Shaun. Great to be here.
Yeah. Okay. So I've sort of provided a really scientific term there, moving stuff. But when we're doing this activity, it would seem that moving items from one area to the next would be safe. But, that's a big but, the stats actually, if we look at some of the analytics of this, it tells a different story.
So true. Unfortunately, agriculture as a sector has one of the highest rates of injuries, and material handling is one of the factors that results in these injuries. Some of those most common incidents do involve equipment like the skid steer or tractor and forklift. But some injuries occur when removing material manually as well, by hand, essentially. And that poses some unique challenges for people and workers, especially in this sector. We do not necessarily handle perfect size or weight boxes with handles. We're moving livestock or bags of fertilizer, seed, or soil. And those can be a little more unruly for us to manage by hand or with equipment. So we need to be sure that we have effective and appropriate controls in place to avoid some of these negative consequences. We've had a few incidents in the last while that involve equipment in particular we hear more about. Some of those, an employee who was helping a group of workers move concrete blocks and it slipped and that worker was struck and killed. And some other incidents where even members of the family, the farmer operating the tractor has members of the family, including the little ones, in the loader bucket, and they've fallen out of that loader bucket and been critically injured or even killed. So absolutely consequences that we can manage and prevent.
Yeah, you provide some good examples there, or not good examples, but definitely examples to get the audience's attention for sure. Sticking with some of that manual sort of moving things, and our the use of brute strength. And for a lot of farmers, they've spent a lot of time in their careers, using physical strength to make stuff happen. Hey, we'll get out of the way. I'll do this. And like you said, a lot of stuff doesn't necessarily have appropriate handles, or it's not meant to be necessarily moved, or the design is not thought of to be moved by physical human strength. This form of material handling, it has risks that maybe like lower in severity, but higher in frequency. And when I think of some of the severities, I think of things like, geez, I hurt my back and things like that. Talk about some of the risks.
Yeah, absolutely. Even still, I think oh, my back hurts is a sign of a hard and good day at work or on the farm. And that's untrue. We can accomplish most of our tasks without that need to be sore at the end of the day. It makes it tough to go to work or on the farm the next day. So absolutely, some of the risks are in the simple tasks like lifting, lowering, pushing, pulling, or carrying some of these materials, even holding on to materials. Think about that example of livestock where we're pulling a calf or we're carrying chickens. Maybe we're even just holding that horse still while the vet is on farm for us. That takes a lot of demand out of our body to overcome some of those forces. And in particular, those factors that lead to some of these injuries, the forces like those weights and pressures I just mentioned, as well, some of the time the posture that we have to work within. We're getting down low to look under equipment to perform our tasks, or we're reaching up high to turn on that beacon on the tractor. And certainly some of the tasks we do are over and over again. It doesn't give our body that opportunity for rest. And that combination, or without that rest, really is where we see the lead to these strains, sprains, or musculoskeletal disorders.
Yeah. Well, we're not working our way into the exertion, right? We're not stretching. We're not starting with lower weights. We're just like, hey, I'm going to move this boulder. Yeah, it can go badly. So, aches and pains, they come with the territory here, but these issues can have definitely a lasting impact. My grandfather, did one heavy lift at one time the wrong way, and man, he fought lower back pain the whole rest of his life. So what can we do to reduce some of the risks?
So I think that point of awareness is so important. For your grandfather, it was that one straw that, broke the camel, the farmer, or your grandfather's back. But really, there have been many exposures up to that point. We've worn and torn our body, and what might seem like that last bale that I'm lifting off of the wagon onto the elevator, and away my back goes. It wasn't just that one. There were so many exposures up to that point. So that awareness, truly for yourself, as well as those who might be your employees or family members, provide some awareness on those hazards. Do it right, know your limits, work within those limits every time. It might not be the first or the 10th time that we experience the back injury, but eventually it will sneak up on us. You know your body best. So again, acknowledge when it is under stress from material handling. Protect yourself from that stress by identifying where you might be able to use some communication, training, or information to better protect yourself and your employees. Livestock handling, using tools rather than your brute strength, safe lifting, the old statement of use your legs, not your back. There's truth to that. There's a few other parts we need to put in sequence, but really practice those strategies. You mentioned stretching as well before we move that boulder, literally or otherwise. Warm up. Farming and material handling in general is tough work. We warm up if we were to exercise. Let's treat this somewhat like exercise. Give yourself that moment to warm the body up. prepare it to be successful rather than those aches and pains. And the best lift really is no lift at all. Can we use equipment? Is there a cart, dolly, or some other item that can help us lighten that load? And even better, is there something with power that can help us further lighten that load? Let's get the mechanical equipment involved and take that weight from us.
Hey, there's nothing more fun than running a forklift on the farm.
Forklift rodeo.
Exactly. Okay, so when we're talking larger loads, farmers will often use equipment at hand, like you said, that can. But it poses a whole different kind of set of hazards, right? So this isn't alleviate the risk. So some of these risks are less frequent, but they can be more serious. So let's talk about that.
Absolutely. So simple for me to say, use the equipment that does control the manual risk, but we've introduced a new set. And to your point, the results can be that much more severe. So it's so important when we do introduce mechanical equipment, we're checking in and making sure that we've mitigated any of the now risks associated with material handling. So whether it's conveyors, lifting devices like cranes, the forklift, hopefully not for rodeo, but otherwise, skid steers, those front end loaders on tractors or backhoes. Check in, inspect, ensure that the hazards like moving parts, capacity, stability of those pieces of equipment, as well as the load, have been well managed.
Yeah. Using the right equipment to perform the proper task. That's kind of a big one, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mentioned about individuals who might be transported on equipment. And in particular, we do see from time to time the front end loader is used as a work platform or a transportation device. That's one example where we are not using equipment for its intended purpose. We want to be sure that we have the right equipment for the weight and size of material that we are going to handle, work within that capacity, and also check in on that condition, ensure we've got appropriate maintenance and when necessary, repair in place. And not only for that mechanical equipment, but consider your devices like cables, chains, and straps that we're going to use to secure the load. We want to ensure that we're within the working limits of those devices as well and not overload. Whatever the capacity is what that equipment and the devices have been designed to manage. If we're overloaded, we've got a risk for failure there. Communicate as well in the workplace. We have some real challenges when we're using mobile and mechanical equipment where we might interact with other people, coworkers or pedestrians on the property. Know where they are. We have huge equipment and very quickly people can get into our blind spots. Know where people are, set up some good communication signals with your employees and family members so that they don't find themselves in those hazardous points. And within the equipment itself, part of that check really is to be sure that you're visible. Have a look at your lights, the beacons, signage, decals, so that not only you know where the hazards are, but anyone who might be working within that area. And provide that information to those people who might be in the area, not only the person on the seat of the equipment.
So the last thing we're going to talk about is maybe less common for some farmers, but if you've got a warehouse, like I know I grew up in a seed farm, we had pallet racking to put away some seed bags and things like that. But we do have farmers that are moving materials into storage. Okay. And I want to touch on quickly here the safety precautions related to that.
Yeah, handling is only part of the story. It has to start and end somewhere. And as you suggested, racking, shelving, bins, silos, any of our bulk storage areas, as well as lofts and overhead storage areas where this material or load is going to start and end. In a similar way, we want to work within our limits, ensure that those structures are stable, that we understand the capacity, and of course we understand the weight and size of our load, that it will fit within that capacity. And when we're considering storage, consider as well the devices like our containers, pallets, or totes that our material is going to be stored within, onto that racking or loft. Ensure it's in good condition, not likely to allow the load to release unexpectedly. And check in on those posts, the cross members, all of the parts of these structures. Some of the time in congested areas, we might clip that post with the rear end of our forklift or the front end loader bucket of the skid steer. Check in where we see damage, report that, let's repair or replace that part. Structures like racking collapse quite suddenly, even with minor damage. So be sure we're checking in. It's going to hold up what we've put upon it.
Great stuff. Great advice. And, a lot of times we're doing some of these things every day. And so that's where we kind of drop our guard, right? And so it's important to have this reminder. And really appreciate, Kristin, you sharing some of your insights and great work there at WSPS. For more information, safety considerations around manual and mechanical material handling, I want you to go, everybody, to WSPS.ca/farm safety. There's a bunch of free, easy-to-use resources there for sure. So, Kristin, thanks a lot for joining us here today on the Farm Safety Roundup.
Thanks so much, Shaun.
I am sure many of us have tons of anecdotes where, I really shouldn't have done that. Yeah, tweaked my back. What was I thinking? Oh, it wasn't that heavy. I don't know what happened. We've all been there. Still doing it today. But we got to think about some of the safety considerations. And Kristin did a great job there. Really appreciate her joining us for the Farm Safety Roundup here on RealAg Radio. Now, if you have any feedback on today's program, we'd love to hear from you. Send me an email, shaney@realagriculture.com. You can also call the RealAg feedback line, 855-776-6147. Tomorrow, we'll be broadcasting from St. John's, Newfoundland. Looking forward to it. We'll be on the rock. Hopefully you join us here on Rural Radio 147 and the RealAg Radio podcast. Thanks so much, everybody, for getting real and getting connected with RealAg Radio. We'll chat again tomorrow. Cheers, everybody.
Thank you for downloading this RealAg Radio podcast, brought to you by Intruvix 2 Herbicide from FMC. Intruvix 2 Herbicide for cereals delivers outstanding pre-seed control of the toughest broadleaf weeds like kochia, volunteer canola, and narrow-leaved hawksbeard. See your local retailer today.